Hello and welcome to Psyched, the show where we explore psychedelics through social, economic, and political perspectives. Up, we have Kim Kuypers. Kim Kuypers is affiliated as an associate professor with Maastricht University, Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience, where she obtained her PhD in 2003. Her main goal is to understand the neurobiology underlying flexible cognition, empathy, and well-being. To accomplish this, she uses a psychopharmacological model to induce subacute and longer-lasting effects on aforementioned behavior with psychedelics and investigate the underlying biology. She also conducts survey research to understand the motives underlying psychedelic use and the experienced effects, and she develops new paradigms to study cognitive flexibility and empathy in a more ecologically valid way. The survey research gives direction to her experimental research in which she uses the newly developed paradigms. Her research contributes to the understanding of the biological and psychological underpinnings of cognitive and emotional processes linked to well-being. Kim, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Psyched.
Thank you so much for this invitation and for this introduction. You gave away my presentation. No, I'm just kidding. First of all, I would like to say welcome in Belgium, because that is where I live. I'm still in my home office. And today I've prepared a short presentation about who we are, what we do, and what we've accomplished and what we still want to accomplish. And then I'm more than welcome to, more than happy to accept questions. Sorry. So let me see how this works. Next. Okay. So who are we? We are a lab that is based in the Netherlands. So that's actually 20 kilometers from where I live. And we started doing placebo-controlled studies with psychedelics in 1999 already. And we were one of the first labs worldwide to do this research. We also have a long-standing history of cannabis research, but that's not my focus. I'm more focused on MDMA and classical psychedelics. So we work with a core team, and that includes a professor, associate professor, assistant professor, but also a medical doctor and senior research assistants, and a number of PhD students and postdocs. And if you want to learn more about us, you can visit our website here, and there you can click on all of us. So who am I? I already introduced it a bit. I'm Belgian, I'm working in the Netherlands. I'm a passionate researcher, and I'm mother of my son, Sam. So I told him to be quiet now because I had to give this talk. If you want to know or learn more about my research or teaching activities, you can visit my website. And here on the right, you can also see, if you don't know where Maastricht is, that is where I work. It's located in the center of Europe. And underneath the cards, the map of Europe, you can see the building where I work. So something about our facilities, I really thought that I had to include this because I feel very privileged that we have all these great facilities. So it's actually a Valhalla for a researcher. I've listed some of the facilities that are relevant for my psychedelic research, but if you visit our website, you can also see other facilities we have, like a helicopter simulator. So we are located, or there is an imaging center at our premises, and we have three scanners. Sorry, it's late. It's 6 o'clock in the Netherlands, so I'm started losing my speech. We also have TMS labs, EEG labs, a virtual reality lab that I also use to design a new paradigm, a new empathy paradigm. We have behavioral labs where we do run the computer-based tasks. We have sleep labs, and we are also equipped with a phase 1 study unit. And that is very important for our work with novel psychoactive substances. And that's also something I really like. We can do research with these novel compounds. So we have done a study with 4-AV, for example, a study with JWH018, a synthetic cannabinoid, and there are still more studies to come. So what is our main business, so to say? What we do the most are these placebo-controlled experimental studies. And what we do is we ask the population who uses these drugs and who wants to be involved in our studies. So if people state, I'm willing to participate, they enter a selection procedure, they're medically screened, and when they're healthy, they enter the study. Then we give, here I've put psilocybin as an example. We give psilocybin on one occasion and a placebo, so a non-active substance, on another occasion. And we test their empathy, creativity, whatever we are interested in. And then we see, or we test whether their empathy is increased after consuming psilocybin compared to placebo or not. And then we can draw conclusions. You also stated that I'm interested in the biology. That is true. So sometimes we give a psychedelic, but we also combine it with a medicine, something that blocks a specific receptor we think is involved in these effects we see. So an example of such a medicine is ketanserin, and you see it in a couple of studies. So it's the 5-HT2A, the serotonin 2A blocker. So when you give that together with psilocybin and you don't observe the behavioral effects, you know that your effects are due to the 5-HT2A receptor in this case. What we also do, and also told it to the audience, is we run naturalistic studies. And that is, we go to retreats where people consume these substances, and then we test either the acute or the subacute effects. So subacute is when they are not, when they took the drug and they are not under the influence anymore. And there we give them some tests, creativity tests, empathy tests, and we also follow them up in time. Then the last aspect of my work is running survey studies. And that's something I actually really like, because there we ask users, what effects did you experience when taking these drugs, or why do you use it? And this is highly needed information which gives input and shapes our placebo-controlled studies. So I want to run you through some milestones. I've selected some. And I also see some chats, but I cannot read them. I will have a look at them when I'm done with this. So 2 milestones for me from my placebo-controlled studies is my first publication, my first authored publication ever. This is a study we started in 2002, and we were interested to see whether MDMA can affect verbal memory, which was highly important back then because there was a lot to do about ecstasy users showing deficits in memory. But we did not know whether it was due to the MDMA, the major psychoactive components in ecstasy, or other substances. So we did this study, and we showed that MDMA can impair memory. So yes, a causal relationship, but we also tested a day later, and we showed that the memory impairment was absent. So this is very important when we want to give these substances to patients, that we know that their memory does not stay impaired after a single dose. A second milestone for me, this is a study I also like, is because we always test, or we used empathy tests in the past, usually using the visual aspect, so showing, sorry, I'm getting distracted by all these chats I see popping up. So We used a different approach in this study. Instead of showing faces, we presented the volunteers with sounds, positive sounds, negative sounds, and we gave them MDMA. And what we showed was that while they were highly aroused when hearing negative sounds, they were not that aroused anymore while they were under the influence of MDMA. And this was actually the biological mechanism underlying this effect was the 5-HT2A receptor. So we tested that in the way that I showed you before. Why is this so interesting? I think because we are using MDMA in clinical trials with patients suffering from PTSD. And when these patients have to talk about their negative experiences, this, at least that is my hypothesis, this will cause not that much arousal because MDMA reduces this arousal due to negative stimuli or negative events that they share. 2 milestones from our naturalistic studies. The first one is a study we did in collaboration with Jordi Riba, most famous ayahuasca researcher, I think, or one of the famous ayahuasca researchers. What we did is we went to retreats where people consumed ayahuasca and we tested their creativity while they were under the influence. And what we showed was, while they were under the influence, their divergent thinking increased, but their convergent thinking decreased. So they were more able to think out of the box, but when they had to come to the right solution to solve the problem, they did not deliver. An interesting addition here is that we did another study and there we tested the subacute effect, so the day after the consumption of ayahuasca. And there we showed that convergent thinking, so coming up with the right solution, was enhanced the day after. And this is actually what you want in therapy. You want people, while they are under the influence, to break out of rigid thinking patterns. Like if you're depressed, you think that you are bad, everything is negative. And then when taking, again, that's the hypothesis, when taking ayahuasca, you can break these thinking patterns while under the influence. And the day after, when you would have the integration session, you would be able to come to novel thinking patterns, integrating everything during that session. And a second milestone from these naturalistic studies is the study we did with psilocybin, also at a retreat. And there we tested subacute. So we showed that emotional empathy, so feeling for somebody in an emotional state, is enhanced. And this was true, this lasted 7 days after the consumption of psilocybin. We also do survey studies, I told you, and again here, two of it's always so difficult to pick the most beautiful things you produce. They're all your babies. So the first one is about, we asked people, psychedelic users, whether they use psychedelics to treat mental conditions. And the first study I show you here shows that people are self-medicating with microdoses. Here we also have another publication on using full psychedelic doses, but here it's specifically microdosing. We show that they use it for a range of conditions, amongst which are ADHD and depression. They find it very efficacious, and what is interesting here, it are anecdotal claims. So it are user claims, so anecdotes, but it's on this grounds we can base our research. So if people state, I feel better, I have ADHD and I feel better when taking this, you have a reason to conduct a scientific study to see whether you can objectify these claims. The last one I want to show you is about motives for use. And why do I like this one? Because here we compared classical substances with novel psychoactive substances. And the main result here was the motives of use are comparable between classical and novel psychoactive substances. So they use it to be able to concentrate more or to feel high, or we had a number of motives listed, but for cannabis and the synthetic version, it differed, because there they really they used the synthetic variant only to become intoxicated. That was the only motive. So here you can also see that if you want to teach people or make prevention campaigns, you can use this information, because you know that you have to address them in a different way or give different information. So we're currently also doing research, and not at this moment because of Corona, everything is was stopped. But we have some projects and we have some planned projects, and I selected 3 of them, because we have more than that, but also 3 I'm very proud of. At the moment, we are running an LSD microdosing study in healthy volunteers, giving repeated doses and seeing whether the effects we showed in the first microdosing study, that was our dose finding study, whether we still see them after repeated dosing, whether these effects change. Then the second one is we're going to do a study for MAPS, the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy study for PTSD patients. That is about to start. We have approval from the ethics committee. Now we only need this Corona ban to be lifted off our shoulders. And then the last one is a study we're going to do for MindMeds. We're going to look into the effects of LSD microdoses on adult ADHD patients. What is my aim with this research? I told you I love to do research, but I also want to contribute to something bigger. So with my research, I really hope that I can improve the mental health of people who suffer. I'm not into finding a cognition enhancer, but I really want to increase the mental well-being of people who suffer in life. And the second thing that drives me is that I really want to know how these substances can produce these effects on a biological level, but also on a psychological level. And what is my vision? I always present this. This is my hospital of the future, where in the windows you see the 4 classes of psychedelics: the classical psychedelics, the empathogens, the dissociative agents, and the more unique substances like cannabis that have a range of effects depending on the dose. And how do I want to get there? That's by doing the thing in the left panel. So by running as much studies as possible with all these different compounds and different doses in healthy volunteers. That is the starting point, and then see whether it matches with some of the indications in the DSM or in the ICD. So, and actually with this, I would like to end, and I would like to hear your questions. I think I can now go to the chat to see. I will stop sharing, and I hopefully can now see the things in the chat.
Hey, Kim, how are you?
Oh, still on our facility slide.
Yeah.
I'm fine. It did not move.
For a little bit it didn't, and I had stepped away, so I wasn't able to assist you. But I think we've got it figured out. I'd love to start out with a question regarding our talk on basically biology and the biological side of things. You know, we're currently working on our own research paper, really focused on the biology. But from what we've seen, there's really not that much out there. Over these next 10 years, what are some of the insights into the biology of psychedelics that you're most excited to bring to the forefront of this field?
That is a very difficult one without revealing too much. No, giving the company secrets. Do you know what the bottleneck is with this kind of research? Yeah, not only that it's highly expensive, but also you can have a lot of hypotheses about the mechanism of action, but you don't have the right substances substances to give. Like I gave you the example, we're interested in the 5-HT2A receptor, so we give ketanserin. But ketanserin is not it is specific, but it also works on the 2C receptor. So you will not be able to draw, you can draw conclusions, but it will not be that clear as you want it to be as a researcher. I have hypotheses about other pathways, but then you don't have approved substances to give. So it will be a very difficult field, and that you have to work with the things you have. Mm-hmm. So we can only investigate, like I said, we can only investigate if we have the blockers to give people. So for me, yeah, there is still a lot to detect. I'm interested in a lot of levels. I'm interested in the gut, how it communicates with the brain. So I see there a couple of things. I'm also very interested in hormones, but hormones have an interaction with neurotransmitters. So we have to do a lot of mechanistic studies, and then also do not forget about imaging. We now have a very, I think, yeah, we just published a paper on that. You also have spectroscopy, which you can use to assess or measure the glutamate levels, which is also a very, I think, nice technique. So I think it also all has to be clustered to see the full picture. But that was a very long answer, and it was not that concrete, because that is science. You also know that.
Yeah, definitely. One of our audience members is asking specifically about empathy. What criteria do you use to identify empathy or a change in empathy?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's also oh no, I have to. Oh, that is also one of the limitations of this research. Oh, I'm sounding so negative. So what I would love to do is just measure empathy in real life. And we will come to that at one stage, but then you also have the problems with privacy. But apart from that, how are we assessing that? With a computer-based task. So yes, I see the limitations because it's not real, and we use pictures of people depicting an emotion. So you only have the visual aspect. So I'm very aware of that. That is why I also came up with the other task using the audio. So, and I also came up with another task, more video-based. So we have to also need people that can improve that aspect. So you cannot do everything, although I would like to do everything. But so we assess this, we ask people, can you identify which emotion is depicted? This is cognitive empathy. We also ask them how much they feel for another person and how much it arouses them. That is emotional empathy. And then you can see whether that changes. This is not my task. When I wrote a grant proposal about the positive effects of MDMA, I was looking into research, and I found this task. It's from Isabel Geobeck, and she does autism research. And she showed that there is a dissociation. She showed a dissociation with this task. So it is sensitive, and yes, it can show drug effects. But do I think this is the most? This is the task I want to use for my whole life? No, like I said, we need improvement also there. Without blaming somebody, or it is the yeah. You get what I mean.
Definitely. Well, maybe, I don't know if this will be helpful to your research. I remember reading a paper on how the reaction time and the size of yawn that people mimic in one another. So maybe showing people videos of people yawning and seeing how they respond to it is a good indicator of empathy. But yeah, so Kim, we are out of time, but thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your insights and everything.
Yes, thank you for having me, and good luck. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to later. Bye-bye.